Hello, boxing fans around the world. Thank you for joining me once again here on Talkin Fight for another episode of Boxing News today. And we've got quite a few stories to go through, but mostly emanating out of Saudi Arabia, which I have touched on in recent episodes with respect to, among other things, sports washing. But anyway, Tyson Fury and Oleksandr Usyk hit the microphone the other day prior to their clash upcoming in Riyadh. And this is what the WBC heavyweight champ Fury, 34-0-1, 24 knockouts. And his opponent, WBO, IBF, WBA heavyweight champ Oleksandr Usyk, 21-0, 14 knockouts, had to say at the media workout down in Saudi Arabia a few days just before all the belts will be on stake on the line and on pay-per-view, by the way, from the Kingdom Arena in Saudi Arabia. It'll be interesting to see what the pay-per-view numbers are, because it's certainly not getting the hype over in North America, if you ask me. Yes, boxing fans are talking about it, but I don't know who's really going to pay for this fight in North America and around the world, other than countries in between the United Kingdom and Ukraine. Tyson Fury had this to say: "I'm on top of the world, baby. Who wouldn't be enjoying it? I'm in the great kingdom of Saudi Arabia. This is the main event. It is the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. We're looking forward to putting on a fantastic show for the world to watch." I myself am not convinced that the world will be watching. But you can argue with me all you want. "I feel good," said Oleksandr Usyk. Each event brings with it a new experience. It's always a wonderful, great, and new experience for the team, especially when you're being headbutted by the opposition. Sorry. I don't have a final message for him, meaning Fury. I will save that for Saturday. Kind of boring, if you ask me. Anyway, in other news, Shakur Stevenson, 21-0, 10 knockouts, will make his inaugural defense of the WBC lightweight world championship belt he holds against 2016 Olympic bronze medalist Artem Harutyunyan. He's 12-1, by the way, 7 knockouts. That'll take place on ESPN at the Prudential Center on July 6th in Shakur Stevenson's hometown of Newark, New Jersey. Lucky fella. Stevenson had this to say at his recent media exposure event: "It feels good to be going back home to Newark, where they appreciate a young legend, and to make my first title defense at 135. And so that'll take place on July 6th. Down goes Artem," he says. Artem responded, "I respect Shakur Stevenson as a champion, but I'm coming to shock his hometown fans and win the WBC lightweight championship. This is the opportunity of a lifetime, and I'll take full advantage of it." Guy must be pretty old. In the co-feature, O'Shaquie Foster, someone who we've mentioned quite often here on Talkin Fight, 22-2, 12 knockouts, will defend his WBC super featherweight world title against Olympic gold medalist and 3-time world title challenger Robson Conceição. He's 18-1, by the way, 9 knockouts. O'Shaquie Foster had this to say: "I'm excited to be back for my third title defense. Conceição is a great opponent who's been in the ring with a lot of top fighters. But come July 6th, we will be ready. I will keep proving that I'm one of the best fighters in the world." Robson had this to say: "I'm not going to let this opportunity slip away. I can guarantee you that. I'll give my best. I'll leave everything in the ring. Blood, sweat, and dedication. Everything will be invested in the title bout." Also, in the 10-round lightweight televised opener, Keyshawn Davis, 10-0, 7 knockouts, will take on Miguel Medeiros, 31-2, 28 knockouts. Very good. Undercard action features the return of 20-year-old lightweight prodigy Abdullah Mason, 13-0, 11 knockouts, fighting against Louis Abron, 25-1, 13 knockouts, and unbeaten 6'7" heavyweight prospect Damian the Polish Hussar Kurbaya. He's 13-0, 7 knockouts. He's going up against Richard Lartey, 16-6, 13 knockouts. That'll be a great fight for sure. Let's have a quick update on Adrian Broner. We haven't spoken about this young man in a while. Former 4-division world title champion Adrian the Problem Broner status was in doubt, but it looks like he will show up to face once beaten welterweight Blair the Flair Cobbs face-to-face in a preview of their special WBC People's Championship matchup. That'll be part of 6 title fights in a press conference coming up, I believe today, actually. The two will be joined by WBC Cruiserweight champ Noel the Dark Horse Mikaelian. He's 27-2 out of Miami. And the number 1 challenger in Ryan the Bruiser Rozicki, fighting out of Canada. Great fighter indeed, 20-1, 19 knockouts. Promoting a night of fights entitled Fists of Fury. Guess by who? Promoted by Don King Productions. All right, let's hope Ryan Rozicki emerges victorious in that fight. Elsewhere, I posted this, by the way, on our YouTube channel under the polls. Take a look. It's probably floating around the internet somewhere. What are your thoughts on this one? Turki Alalshikh lists his dream fights. Okay. And he's got the money to put them together, quite frankly, all of them. So my question in the poll was, which one would you prioritize if you had the money to promote a fight of these stature? Anyway, let's have a quick look here. The fights he sees as his dream fights. His Excellency says he'd like to see Canelo go in the ring against Crawford. Inoue the Monster go in against Tank Davis. He'd like to see Fury and Joshua go toe-to-toe. And finally, assuming we have a Bivol Beterbiev winner one day, he'd like to see David Benavidez take on that winner. So those are his 4 dream fights. But something he's working on a clash between undisputed super middleweight champ Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford. He is working on this fight to happen late this year in 2024 or in early 2025. And he wants it to take place. And what he wants, he gets, I guarantee it, in New York, Las Vegas, or Los Angeles in a large stadium, he adds. Okay. Now, this is assuming the 36-year-old Crawford, who's 40-0, 31 knockouts, wins his match against WBA junior middleweight champ Israel Madrimov in a fight taking place on August 3rd. And so if in fact Crawford wins that match, he'd be getting back in the ring pretty darn quickly to begin training for that fight against Canelo, which His Excellency hopes will take place in December, as I said, early 2025. Turki Alalshikh said, "I want this fight, and we are thinking to do it in America because we want it huge." To my point earlier about Fury and Usyk not even probably making a dent in the U.S. media right now, let alone the Canadian media. Anyway, another fight that Turki Alalshikh is working on is, and by the way, he's now listed a promoter. This is according to Saudi Arabian promoter Turki Alalshikh. Anthony Joshua will fight the winner of Daniel Dubois versus Filip Hrgovic next. I need say nothing else because, quite frankly, Joshua, he's won his last 4 fights. Jermaine Franklin, Robert Helenius, Otto Wallin, and most recently when he clobbered Francis Ngannou. Anyway, he has been tipped to fight Tyson Fury, but we'll have to wait as the Gypsy King has a 2-fight agreement with Oleksandr Usyk. So that means AJ will have to sell for another contender. And Alalshikh says he wants his fight that he wants to take place in September. He said, "We have Joshua's fight in September. It all depends on the result of the Hrgovic fight with Dubois." So there you go, fight fans. A bit of insight there. And believe me, money talks, bullshit walks. And believe me, His Excellency has the money to make all this shit happen. Okay. Jay Opataya, one of our favorite fighters from Down Under, New Zealand, actually does not want to inherit Alexander's throne. He wants to beat the man himself. Opetaya could quite possibly be the best cruiserweight in the world. No, he is from down under. The Australian rematches Marius Brightus in an IBF world title fight on the undercard of Fury versus Usyk, uh, coming at you live on Sky Sports in a few days' time. Opetaya has designs on unifying the other cruiserweight titles, but he longs to fight Usyk, who was formerly the undisputed champion of the cruiserweight division. So we'll have to see where that ends up. Opetaya is, in fact, a great fighter. He said, "I would love to fight Usyk. I've watched Usyk for a long time. I was a 17-year-old kid at the Olympics in London 2012, and he won the Olympics. I've always been in the shadows. I've always been very close, and now I'm starting to roll into my prime. I'm not a little kid anymore. Now they know I'm on their radar. It's a good feeling. I've always been on top of where I was at. He's always been number one seed. So to get a fight with him, I'd love that." And quite frankly, so do we. But you know who's another rising cruiserweight? This one out of New Zealand. David Nika. He'll be fighting also on the stage on the big stage, I might add, in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, on Saturday night in a few days' time. The New Zealander is all too aware he needs to impress after being handed a golden opportunity to fight on that spectacular undercard, which will precede Tyson Fury and Oleksandr Usyk and their historic heavyweight title fight, again, for the undisputed title, which was last held by Lennox Lewis in a three-belt era 25-odd years ago. Nika, he's 8-0, 7 knockouts, is also attempting to win for another cause, raising money for the Against Malaria Foundation, pledging $10 for every punch both he and opponent Michael Seitz, he's 12-0, 10 knockouts, land. Fans can also pledge a donation with over $25,000 already raised for people in Uganda affected by malaria, particularly children. And it's a cause close to Nika's heart. He said, "Obviously, I'm running things down people's throats on social media, but it feels like such an easy thing for me to keep doing. I'm going to fight hard like I always do and land a lot of punches and raise a lot of money for a really cool cause. I've always wanted to go back to Uganda where my father's heritage dates back to. I've got 3 nephews under 5 that could very well be living in different circumstances if we were a couple of generations prior, you know. It's a nice way to give back," he said. "It's just a small percentage of what I'll be making in this next fight." Wouldn't it be interesting if he plopped in a few more dollars out of his own purse into that cause? Anyway, $10 per punch. Let's see what happens. Well, let's have a quick look at this particular headline. It says, according to BoxingScene.com, heavyweight history dictates that Fury Usyk won't live up to the hype. Let's have a quick read of the first couple of paragraphs here. Though we've all rightly bemoaned the amount of time it's taken to get here while blaming the multiple sanctioning bodies, the promoters, the broadcasters, even the various fighters involved for the delay, the truth is that contests as ginormous as Tyson Fury versus Oleksandr Usyk have always been something of a rarity. The existing politicking and convoluted championship system should be held at least partly responsible. However, in practically every other era aside from this 4-belt era, the champion would fight their closest rival as a matter of course. Consequently, there simply wasn't enough time, like, say, 25 years, for the desire to build like it has for this one. Thus, if we're to draw positive from the quarter of a century wait, is that we wouldn't now be nearly as excited as if we hadn't been forced to endure it. But there are other fights to which we can compare Fury Usyk, at least in terms of interest. When Jack Johnson was the world heavyweight champion, such was the way of the world in 1910, there was an almighty clamor for him to lose his championship to a white man. So much so that former champion, the unbeaten but aging James J. Jeffries, was hauled out of a 6-year retirement weighing a reported 300 pounds with a $10,000 sign-on bonus and the promise of a hefty portion of the $101,000 purse. I'm pretty sure that was huge money back over 110 years ago. Anyway, legend has it that Johnson initially agreed to throw the fight for a handsome sum. But when the location was switched from San Francisco to Reno, and thus the original contract was ripped up, the champion had a change of heart and declared it would be a case of best man wins. Show promoter Tex Rickert, who hailed Johnson Jeffries as the fight of the century, was also doubling up as the referee, and several observers from the time reported that, privately, Jeffries knew the only way he could win was if the fix was in. Wow. Regardless, the public was invested to extreme levels, and an arena was constructed specifically for the fight, which took place on July 4th, 1910. Jeffries, even though out of shape and ambition, opened as a 10-7 favorite with nearly all the 15,670 people in attendance expecting him to win. In Chicago, a further 10,000 people, who the likes in the arena were almost exclusively white, gathered outside the tribute building to listen to a bloke with a megaphone provide updates of the action. In New York, 30,000 people were in Times Square to keep their eyes on a new device that provided automated updates. The fight itself was a one-sided and tepid affair. In the 15th round, Johnson decked a bloated and bloody Jeffries, who dutifully, albeit hopelessly, clambered to his feet. Count beaten, but Johnson far from, Jeffries then found himself jabbed out of the ring, helped back in by reporters, and then finally floored for the third and final time. The bludgeoning was all over, so was the notion of Johnson Jeffries ever being a good idea. Wow. 28 years later, with World War II edging ever closer, America was keen for a new heavyweight king. Joe Louis, the only second African-American after Johnson to wear the crown, this time to beat the white man. 2 years before, Germany's former world champ, Max Schmeling, had stunned Louis, who was deemed close to unbeatable at the time when he stopped the Brown Bomber in a non-title fight in 12 rounds. Anyway, by June 1938, Louis versus Schmeling 2 was the biggest event in sport. Schmeling was the unwitting mascot of Adolf Hitler's Germany, with Louis, who had beaten Jimmy Braddock to win the title, the man to stop the richest prize in sports, winding its way towards the Nazis. Staged in Yankee Stadium, New York, in front of 72,000 fans, Louis opened up as 3-1 favorite, despite the steady beatdown he'd endured in the first fight. Unlike Jeffries, however, Louis proved the bookmakers right, with a showing that remains one of the most brilliant and brutal. Louis dropped Schmeling 3 times in the opening round, each time from sickening right hands, and that was all she wrote. Those Louis electric performers wowed those in the attendance. A competitive contest, it was not. Okay, let's because it's a lengthy article. I'll invite you to go to boxingscene.com and check out that story on heavyweight history. All righty, let's have a quick look here and see what Frank Warren has to say about this upcoming fight. When Tyson Fury and Oleksandr Usyk go head-to-head for 4 belts, they'll be going for a shot at a unique piece of history, according to former manager Frank Warren, who believes that the fight will be very special. Fury and Usyk will go for the first 4-belt battle in history, and unsurprisingly, Warren is backing his fighter, who he called the best heavyweight of his generation. Tyson Fury's manager and promoter, Frank Warren, told TNT Sports that he believes that the British heavyweight unification fight against Oleksandr Usyk is not just boxing history, it's sporting history. Fury and Usyk are set to fight for a world first 4 belts on Saturday, May 18th in Riyadh, which you can watch live on TNT Sports box office. And speaking to TNT ahead of the fight, Warren tried to put into perspective just how big of a fight this is. He said, "People reinvent history all the time, and it annoys me. And in boxing, maybe they find an easy target, but this is a great fight, both, as I said, undefeated and both in their prime, 4 belts on the line. First time there's been a unification this century. This is the first time there's been a unification for the 4 belts ever. This is history. This is real boxing history and sporting history." Speaking of history, let's go back a few years and talk, albeit very briefly, about Conor Benn. I will just read you the headline here because it does make me laugh in the wake of Eddie Hearn's comments with respect to Ryan Garcia and Eddie Hearn demanding that he be banned for life. Anyway, one of his fighters, Conor Benn, that's Eddie Hearn's fighters, Conor Benn, is back on suspension over his 2022 positive doping test. And it's a pretty short article, but there's no need to go any further, really. Basically, he's not allowed to fight in the UK, and I guess he'll continue his career elsewhere around the world if he can find someone who will fight him. Let's have a quick look here. Oh, finally, yes, to wrap this up, of course. As we all know, we're looking forward to Mike Tyson clobbering Jake Paul, but the undercard has swelled for their July 20th fight at AT&T Stadium in Texas with a new announcement from Netflix. Most Valuable Promotions have worked behind the scenes to add more contests to the bill, which also features, by the way, Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano. And what will, let's have a quick look here and what will come up. Come on, let's get on with it. 2 of the hottest undefeated prospects in the game. H2O Silva versus Kid Austin, Floyd Schofield. Floyd Schofield, often mentioned on Talkin Fight, one of our favorites. And a battle for redemption. World champion boxer versus UFC star in Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. versus Darren Till. And they said in their announcement, more fights to come. Stay tuned. So we certainly look forward to seeing Ashton Silva and Floyd Schofield go head-to-head. That'd be pretty good fight there. And Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. should be able to beat ex-UFC star Darren Till. But anyway, on that level, Chavez Jr. recently suffered mental issues that saw police called to intervene. And we had just the other day, and I invite you to listen to this interview, Brandon Epstein came on the show and talked about how boxers need to handle themselves both in the ring and outside the ring in order to prepare to move up the rankings. It was a great interview, and I invite you to go back onto the talkinfight.com site and have a look at what he had to say, because a lot of boxers that I talk about have certainly encountered what we call mental issues. Anyway, I won't talk any further about Chavez Jr., just wish him well in his fight. And that, my friends, brings us to an end of this particular episode. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it very much. Remember to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell. I see there's not much else popping up on my screen. So I bid you adieu, and we'll see you again on talkinfight.com.